So one question I often get is, how do you even start? How do you get into programming? And what does it take to become a programmer? So you need either a laptop or a physical box, and you need to have access to the internet to download and view and read and watch videos and do all that sort of thing. So that is an absolute prerequisite today. The way I started is entirely different. I went to a bookshop, which was a second-hand bookshop where they sold older magazines, and I went in there and grabbed some old Computer Bytes magazines and things like that and learned small snippets of code. Usually it was out of context, so it was very difficult to piece these things together. We didn't have the convenience or luxury of video on demand or anything like that. If you did purchase a book, the book would be a limited resource. You would have one or two books and you would learn from that. And you would have to know, was that the right thing to learn? Is that the right language? You'd be sitting in a bookshop not really understanding what to take off the shelf and how to start. So things were a bit different then. Today you need an internet connection, that's for sure. Now, personally, I prefer an actual PC or a Mac. I prefer the physical box. Even a Mac is secondary to the PC in my mind because it means that I can learn and build the computer myself. I think, and I recommend this to everyone starting out, go ahead and buy yourself a computer, but there's nothing better than putting it together yourself. The other thing that you need in order to learn is to put yourself on the right path. Now, the right path could be the right language or maybe the right technology or the right approach. And for that, you really should consider going onto a forum or finding someone that you trust. This is not necessarily on a forum, but you can start there. Post a question on Reddit. Find out a friend of a friend who is already a coder. What you need to do is find out and discover which direction you want to go in, right? Do you want to stay with Windows or Linux? Do you want to go on a Mac? Do you want to learn app development and so on, game development? And they'll give you an idea of the sorts of technologies and languages that you need to get started. For example, if you want to get into business applications, which is not everyone's dream, if you wanted to get into business applications, then you want to go for a lightweight, sort of memory controlled, garbage collected, kind of easier, no memory pointers, nothing like that. You want to go into something simple where you can build models, business logic, components, layers, some architecture and so on, and build business logic. If you want to get into games, then you need to look at a platform and a language that suits gaming. So can you learn programming from an online course or from YouTube videos? Well, you can learn bits and pieces, but really the ultimate thing is to practice every day. Nothing beats opening a development environment and not knowing at all what to do and gradually getting your feet together on firm ground, learning little bits and pieces, all this 14 error messages, not knowing what to do, Googling those error messages and learning from there. Nothing beats that. It is practical, it is pragmatic. But you do need a good foundation. Now, programming comes with two kinds of things, two things to consider. One is the computer science part, the foundations of all programming in computers, the computer science, and the next is some sort of domain knowledge, understanding the gaming industry, understanding how games are put together or how game mechanics works, the maths behind that, the physics. You could also get into, let's say, cosmetics and learn formulations, recipes, how to make certain things. So if you wanted to get into cosmetics and you wanted to get into fashion or Formula One, you need to understand more about that domain. Now, these are two tracks that you can follow. You can learn how to program while being spearheaded by the domain in which your passion falls. For example, you can learn a programming language that is used by a Formula One team. You can say, well, let me go and have a look. What do they do? Let me do some research. Well, they use AWS or Python. They use this, they use that. What do they use? Let me use that technology. And that's one way to get into it from a domain perspective. And the second is a computer science technique. And that is you're going from learning the fundamentals of computer science, you're learning everything from binary or electronics and gates all the way through to building your own operating system and programming languages. And that is an entirely different route. You could go into academia, you could join IBM or some other route like that. And, if you wanted a startup, you might want to pick another direction, right? There are hybrids of these two models. They're not sort of separated exclusively, right? You can jump back and forth and learn a bit of both. But really, most people either come from the academic world, learning a computer science version of that world, or they're learning a startup world, kind of a pragmatic, let's get into the domain and learn from there. The vast majority of programmers sit awkwardly in between. And that is where it is quite difficult. You're neither a computer science graduate, or you don't understand, or you have forgotten, or you're in the business world now, and so you're learning business applications, but you don't really understand the business, right? So you don't understand cosmetics or Formula One. Now, why you'd be in Formula One if you didn't enjoy it, well, that's another thing. But really, if you're going for a job, you tend to go for interview on interview and then accept one, and that's what you fall into. Really, we'll talk about that in another episode when I talk about another chapter of the book. And by the way, this video is inspired by the Software Developer's Handbook. It's a book, it's a free book. You can get it in the description. There's a link there. You can download that for free. And this is part of that book. I'm doing a video series exploring the different chapters in that book. And this is the second of those videos. So how else do you get into software development? Well, you have to really learn how to code. Now, learning how to code is a scientific or mathematical approach, but it's also an experience, the team experience, and it's user experience users. And all three of these come together. There's technical, in other words, and then there's non-technical or the creative. And sometimes people talk about software development as an art form, while others talk about it as engineering. And these are the two different camps that exist within the IT world and really within software development. So how do you learn how to write code? Well, that's the thing. That is exactly it. The answer is in the question. Write code. And that is something you need to do daily. You need to write code for many, many hours, exploring all the different routes that is presented to you as you go. You need to build applications, whether it's a small application, whether it's a larger application. You need to take a mix. You can bounce around all sorts of things. Build a personal profile website. Maybe you like cricket or baseball. Maybe you want to build a rugby or a football app. Whatever it is, go ahead and build a small element of that to learn how that works. When I started, I had a folder, a development folder on my hard drive, and within that I had dozens and dozens and dozens of folders. Everything from moving a sheep around with your mouse cursor to hitting something on the head, to hit testing, to a game, to database access, and so on. All sorts of little applications, or really prototypey learning kind of apps. Now, when I needed to learn about a window or how to construct a window in the Windows environment, I would go to this app. Oh, I did that. I've done that already. Let me go and have a look at how I did that. And it becomes your own knowledge base. So it's quite important to build that knowledge base, to build source code. Now, the modern world of having your source code out in the open, using Bitbucket or something like that, or GitHub, well, that's obviously acceptable, and you can put your code out there. And what's nice about that is being part of a community, you can get feedback on the kind of code that you're doing. Understand that it's quite intimidating when you're first starting out. So I would say maybe you start a private repo. Right? When you have the courage, go and join some smaller project that's out there, contribute in a small way, whether it's just doing a bug test or writing what the bug is and submitting it. That is part of the whole learning experience. So learning to code is first of all technical, and you have to just get in and do it. You read as much as you can, you watch as many videos as you can, but you've got to be careful to balance this out. Not to overwatch videos and overread tutorials without actually doing it yourself. There needs to be a very good balance. Pause a video when somebody says something, a term. Pause it and look up that term. Go and read it on Wikipedia or elsewhere and go and learn about that. Continue watching the video. I would also recommend something that I do with learning and reading books is I often skim through the entire book very, very quickly, looking at chapters and the table of contents and index, and read it very quickly. And then I go ahead and I read a particular chapter, and then I might read another chapter. But I might go and take 3 books and look at the same kinds of things. So I might look at memory management in this book, which is talking about Python, might look at memory management from a database perspective, let's say, because I've got a book on a SQL Server, and I might go and look at that again in a .NET book that somebody has written there. And that gives you different perspectives on the thing that you're learning. It's very important to not take one video, one source, one book, and say, well, that is how it works. Right? It's very important to go and get a multitude of perspectives on how to learn and how to read and what you're learning. You'll soon discover, once you get into programming, once you've got some experience, you'll soon discover that terminologies are not as fixed as you would think. There's a lot of anecdotal, subjective things, a lot of new terms, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of ambiguity in what you might learn. So I would say, as a piece of advice, learn, practice, but learn from multiple sources. Learning to code is going back and sitting by yourself, quiet time, and learning. And even in the modern age of teamwork, pair programming, mobbing, and things like that, you still need time alone to reflect and to learn and be pragmatic and do the theory and practical together and have time to digest. So how do you learn how to code? Well, I hope this video has been informative to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be talking more about getting into coding, but from various angles, programming languages and the business of software and all of that. I have other videos in various playlists. Please have a look, make a comment, get involved, ask me a question, and maybe there'll be a video for an answer on a question that you've provided. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time.